2022 wasn't exactly what I would say is the year for gaming, but there were quite a few games that came out this year, at least a lot more than 2021. There were many games that were supposed to come out, but then were delayed because of either development issues, stiff competition, or in some cases, the home country going to war, so the studio has to go to war as well. However, just because it wasn't as plentiful of a year for gaming doesn't mean that there weren't some absolute bangers that came out. But that also means some disappointments and some that need to be destroyed in an eternally smiting pit. That's why I will rank all the games that I played in 2022. There are a few rules for this list though. 1. I will only include games that I actually played. So, I'm not going to be one of those people who pretends to play the game and gives it automatically good or bad reviews. 2. This is my opinion. 3. Some gameplay clips aren't exactly mine because I didn't have a capture card at the time. Or I played the game circumstantially, like a friend's house or some shit. Oh yeah, also 4, I will be ranking them from bottom to top, as in worst to best. Ugh, speaking of worst. What new do I even have to say about this one? Like, what is there to actually say about this? Everyone knows this game is bad. Everyone knows that this game has a dull, barren open world. Everyone knows that the traversal is dull. Everyone knows that this game was released broken and unpolished. Everyone knows that the story, characters, and dialogue feel as if they were written by a bunch of edgy Fortnite 12-year-olds. And everyone knows this game's visuals look like a PS3 launch title. This game is an awkward, boring, broken, unpolished travesty of a game. And this was Saints Row, a reboot to a really great franchise, and they missed the mark 100%. This isn't even a good Saints Row game. Hell, this isn't even a good game. Even Gat Out of Hell was a better game than this train wreck and had a few fun elements. They removed the offensive but still within line humor, they removed the charm of the characters, and they removed being actually funny. This game is such a complete nothing experience that I would indubitably not recommend to anyone. I wouldn't even recommend it to casuals. I wouldn't recommend it to open world fans. And I'm definitely not recommending this shit to Saints Row fans. And yet, we have another nothing game on this list. Except this one has a bit more narrative value. I like the idea that this game isn't connected to the Arkham series, because we kind of already have a game coming out for that later. I like the idea of Batman dying and passing the torch. This game's narrative is actually not awful for the most part. The dialogue is a bit uninspired, but I prefer that over straight up cringe. The characters aren't the best as a group or individually, but they're alright. So this game must have so much going for it, right? Absolutely fucking not. This game is bad. Now, this game isn't completely abysmal, but it is dull and boring. The story may be decent, but the actual game itself is just a giant melatonin wave. We'll start with the visuals first. This game looks so boring visually, and it's weird since this game has been in development for more than 5 years. I totally get that this game wasn't made by Rocksteady, but Jesus Christ, Arkham Knight looks artistically and generationally better than this game ever will. Even the fucking water in 2015. Yes, this 2015 video game looks better than the PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X game. Speaking of generationally being worse, the frame rate is capped to 30 FPS on console. This action game has a 30 FPS mode only, which is really disappointing, since action games are about timing, and they emphasize frame rate so you can help with timing. Fucking hell, even Sonic Frontiers has a performance mode. I'll get to that one later. Apparently, it wasn't as simple as lowering the quality or even taking out assets to heighten the frame rate just a little bit. The game was originally going to be cross-gen, but then was changed after its year-long delay. I've also heard, allegedly, that this game has been rebooted in the middle of development like 5 different times. I don't know if it's exactly true, but I wouldn't be surprised since the 2020 trailer looks so much better than all the later trailers we got. and looks better than the full fucking game. The gameplay is so stiff and dull, and mixed with a 30 FPS performance is a fucking nightmare. The combat system is so repetitive and hilariously bland. I swear, this game looks like an Xbox 360 game that's slightly upscaled during these moments. Listen, I'm okay with the fact that the combat isn't Arkham, but this is such a step down in terms of feel and just overall fun. This game is not at all fun. This game is so disappointing. I don't think this was definitely the worst game of the year, but it surely was the most disappointing game of this year. Now, everyone knows much about Wii Sports and how much of a classic that game is. That game was a pack-in launch title that turned out to be a great game, and it was so fun that it convinced people that the Wiimote Waggle wasn't terrible. Almost. So of course, with such success, and with us being in what we'd call the nostalgia era of entertainment, it made sense that Nintendo wanted some more of that money. So they announced Nintendo Switch Sports earlier this year, and then it came out and it was extremely underwhelming. The general kinesthetics of the gameplay are fine, but damn, this game has like no sports compared to the original games. There are 7 sports, which is like 2 more than the original Wii Sports game, but compared to Wii Sports Resort, which had 12 sports, it's so disappointing. So to go off script here, if you really think about it, the original games technically had 17 sports if you wanted to convince me that they were all one game. Well, probably a little bit less since Wii Sports Resort kinda uses a lot of the stuff from the original, but even then, it still has way more than this. This game was just dull and forgettable. I didn't even want to actually buy it, so I just spontaneously played it at a friend's house during the summer. I do not at all recommend this game. Just go back and play Wii Sports.
Is this a skill issue?
Yeah, honestly, I completely forgot I even played this game. This game is literally an Overwatch 1 update disguised as a new game. Don't believe me? Try booting up the first game and see what happens. Fuck! Seriously though, this game was such a cash grab, just like Nintendo Switch Sports, but at least this one's free, and the only cash really comes from, like, microtransactions in-game. I feel like this game only really exists because Blizzard patched the first game into Oblivion, you know, making it completely unbalanced. They kinda fixed the game. They have it as 5v5 instead of 6v6, which is subtle but a good addition because it makes matches a lot less frustrating. The problem here with this game is that this game is pretty much just 5 glorified patch notes. There's nothing at all making this game stand out other than a few new heroes. Hell, they didn't even release the single player, which is weird because that was the only thing going for it that made it stand out from the first game. Not much to say here about this game. It definitely wasn't necessary, but you can have fun with this. This game was just a big black hole for attention. But at least this game technically doesn't cost a penny, so I'm alright with it. And no, we are not going to talk about the server launch issues at all, because that was at launch. They kind of fixed those and it's fine now, so whatever. Play the game if you really want to. Well, you can't really go back and play the first game, so if you're an Overwatch fan, you literally have to play this game.
What the hell is even that?
Okay. Before I get attacked, hear me out. This game isn't so low here because it's bad. I haven't played every fucking game released in 2022. So I only rank it so low because I don't have infinite time on my hands, and not because it's bad at all. With that being said, this game was incredibly pointless. When this game was first reviewed, I was like 2% excited for it. However, then more stuff came out and I was slowly more and more convinced that this was completely pointless. Along with its $70 price tag, and the PC release that's now having a release date, I guess, being $10 less. Yeah, this game really seemed pointless. After playing this, I definitely think it's for sure the definitive version of The Last of Us 1 story, and even if it's gameplay in some ways, but the game kinda didn't need to exist. This game doesn't really have a lot of genuine issues rooted in anything, but it's the same game you played years ago for better or worse. They removed the multiplayer as well, which wasn't some standout feature that contributed to the acclaim of the first Last of Us, but it would have been a cool thing to have in here. I will definitely say that for the new players, this is definitely the version you should play because it has much better visuals and improves some gameplay elements. But overall, this one was a pointless cash grab.
You're too late, Sonic! I am now forklift certified! Oh my god!
This game is incredibly frustrating to me. I like running around in the open world, but the rest of the general gameplay is mostly a lot of missed potential. I don't even think the gameplay is bad, I just feel like it could have been so much better. The open worlds are pretty bland, and the color palette makes it so much more unappealing. It makes things so much worse when you realize that the first, fourth, and fifth island are literally the exact same file. How original you guys are, Sega. How original. The combat is so aggressively perfunctory because you just mash buttons. There are definitely combos, but they're so incredibly inconsequential that you just resort to spamming a bunch of things. But at least during the Titan bosses, it can be kinesthetically pleasing enough. Speaking of the Titan bosses, they're actually pretty fun and visually a spectacle. They also have the best music in the game and probably the series as a whole. The mini-bosses besides the ninjas and maybe Sumo are kind of dull and boring, and also incredibly easy. But the worst boss is the end. Now, okay. I kind of raged a little bit in my review about it, so I'm not really going to talk about it, but yeah, they literally made it fucking Galaga. And you know what, you can disagree with me about the end and how bad the boss fight is as a whole, just as a game's boss fight, but I will still stand by the fact that I think that this is the worst boss fight in the entire Sonic series, and probably the worst encounter in any of these games. The story in this game is also fine, I guess. It definitely has its moments, but falls short because it's trying so hard to be the definitive and classic Sonic storyline. By classic, I mean of the 2000s or something. But it then just makes the story just feel kind of generic for the most part. I like the characters, you're an outlier. And I feel like the moments between Sonic and his friends are genuinely great, along with the mostly good dialogue. Unfortunately though, the game's story does kind of drag, and it has some genuine boring points. Also, Sage's song is still hilariously terrible. Graphically, this game feels held back by the Switch, but at least on next-gen consoles it looks better and doesn't run at only 30 FPS with really bad frame pacing. This game is so conflicting to me. In some ways it's the best and the worst Sonic game, and in some ways it has elements that could make it the worst game of this year. It's still better than these two, I guess.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
This game was so weird to me, just like Sonic Frontiers. Bayonetta 3 is a great game, except it's trapped in an alright game. First, the story isn't great, and there have been many other games with a multiverse plot that did it so much better in other movies, and shows, and other games, and books, etc. I have literally nothing to say about the story in this game, because this is a Bayonetta game, so let's just talk about gameplay. The gameplay is fundamentally good as always, but it feels like such a downgrade from the games beforehand. It adds the new mechanic of having the demons fight for you, you know, kind of like that mechanic in Devil May Cry 5. But where I think it contextually made more sense in Devil May Cry 5 was that you're playing as essentially a frail and very weak old man who wasn't actually old, but who cares, but was incredibly sadistic and calculated. So rather than constructing combos in the traditional way, like with Nero or Dante or even Virgil, he basically had to play as V in a way that was intelligent. And here, intelligence kind of doesn't exist when you're playing as this character at all. You just get the demons to fight for you, like okay, whatever. The rest of the gameplay is still fundamentally good though. Sadly, the problem I have with this game, that's the biggest issue in my opinion, is the visuals. Because it looks so much worse than Bayonetta 1 and 2. And that's due to the fact that it's running on the Nintendo Switch, meaning it has to be bigger and better. So then we have it downscaled to 720p resolution. And the frame rate is even worse, especially in combat. I swear, this game goes from targeting 60 frames to going down to like 39 because of all the hectic nonsense going on. It sucks because the combat is good as always, on a basic level. Not to say that Bayonetta was ever as good as Devil May Cry in my opinion, but it was still always pleasing to control. The way I feel about this game is the way I feel about crapping on the MCU. I don't like the fact that I have to live in a world where I have to crap on the MCU, but I almost do because it's just kind of falling off. The main difference being that Bayonetta 3 is actually a well-made game for the most part. Bayo 3 was incredibly disappointing to me, but I feel like some people will still get enjoyment out of this. This is the most divisive Bayonetta game in the series, so... You know, my friend Blade also doesn't like this game, but in fact he actually hates it, so yeah, that's a note. In fact, I might actually have Blade on here to just, like, talk about the story for this game. You're up, man.
Thanks, Plat. Oh wait, I just realized your name is Platinum, just like the people who make Bayonetta. Anyway, let me get on with it. So I think Bayonetta 3 personally is garbage. Okay, first off, the story does the whole multiverse thing, but they make it bland and uncreative as possible. It's even more bland than Multiverse of Madness. Like, I love Bayonetta games because of just the insane stuff. Like, you could be like a train, you could be a frog cat thing. Like, there's so much creative stuff they do, but this game, they just like blow it all out. Off, there's different Bayonettas, like there's a whole Twitch e-girl Bayonetta, but hey, you think that's interesting and you want to get to know her? Screw you. The game just wants you to get stupid ass green orbs for the green Gub-Go-Gab-Galab monster. This game doesn't want you to have fun, unlike the other two. First off, the combat is so laggy and boring, bruh. Probably because it's, you know, stuck to the Switch, but this game has the balls to reference Astral Chain. Astral Chain, one of the best hack and slashes from Platinum on the Switch, which you should probably play instead of this garbage ass game. The cutscenes, holy shit, the cutscenes, there is too many of them. They don't progress the story at all, unlike the other games. And funny enough, this game has the most cutscenes out of any Bayonetta game. I can't believe this game got delayed. Like, when games get delayed, they become good, just like that Miyamoto quote. But good lord, this game feels like it wasn't delayed at all. I am beyond disappointed and full-on devastated that this game won to Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, the best beat-em-up game I've played in years, and I think was worthy of Game of the Year, but that's just me. Personally, I think that game should have won Best Action Game, but no, they had to give it to this uncreative slop of a stupid action hack and slash bullshit game. Sorry, that was a little negative, but I just have nothing good to say about this game. Anyway, back to you, Plat.
Got my eyes on a computer screen, trying to work my digits in. I fidget with my lettering, but never with my sentences.
This game was here to repeat the typical cycle of the Smash Bros. Clone. It gets announced, repeatedly gets memed on, the game comes out with more of a decent response, people say that Smash has competition, and then the game dies. I honestly think it's a shame because Multiverses was actually pretty fun. It's not amazing or anything, but it feels fine. The combat might be a little floaty in some ways, but it's still somewhat pleasing. Not really much to say here, I thought the game was fine. I don't really like fighting games that much anymore like I did in middle school, but I still had a decent time with this one. I definitely say play this game with friends.
It's called soccer! It's called...
Mario Strikers Battle League was surprisingly fun, and this is coming from someone who doesn't really like sports all that much. I played this game at a friend's house a few times, and it was really fun. My only real issue with it is that there weren't a lot of characters. It was just a fairly paltry roster, but it was still fun, I guess. If I'm being honest, this game is actually pretty overlooked in my opinion. In spite of PlayStation dick writers praising the game after it came out, no one really finished it or cared all that much about it. I think that was mainly because it was released like a week before Elden Ring, which, you know, PlayStation, Guerrilla Games, Sony, you know, just a heads up, stop releasing your games a week before bigger games. Or at least with this series, Jesus Christ. I think the game is actually solid. I don't like it as much as I said in my PS5 games review, however I still like the combat, stealth, and a few of the puzzles. The gameplay outside of navigating the open world is really fun. Also, the visuals in this game are absolutely amazing. The artistry here, in spite of being a cross-gen game, is astounding, even on a base PS4. My main bone to pick with this game is the story not making sense, and also a lot of nonsensical tracking sequences that you see in basically every open world game nowadays. Which usually doesn't bother me that much, as long as it's brief, but in this game it happens a lot. The main character, Aloy, is incredibly bland and literally the worst character in the game, in spite of the fact that she's basically the main character and literally on the fucking box art posing. I'd rather just let, Kim Moon explain this shit.
I just think the story is dog shit. You can clearly tell the writers had absolutely no clue what to do with this game, and the funniest part was that they could have kept this just as like a small scale character journey for Aloy, and I think it would have genuinely had great storytelling. But no, it had to be the end of the world again, and now there's fucking aliens, but they're not actually aliens, they're like people from 1,000 years ago, from when the world first ended. They barely made an attempt to fix Aloy at all. Keyword barely, cause I'll be fair, there was somewhat of an attempt to fix her if you would consider an attempt to be a 1-minute bit of Aloy feeling like she can't live up to Elizabeth Sobek, who was the person she was a clone of.
This game was definitely worth getting a PS5, but it won't really blow your mind or anything. Yup, just like the other Switch games, I didn't actually buy this one and just played it at a friend's house. Thank you, friend. Anyways, if you like Splatoon 2, you like this game, basically, already. The multiplayer is fun, and I like the aesthetic. My only real issue with this game is that as I got older, I just couldn't enjoy it as much. Like, it's not like it's for babies or anything, but I feel like sometimes the style is just kind of cringe now. Also, you can never give a single mini fuck about the story in this game. I don't give a shit about Splatoon lore, I just care about multiplayer. As fun as this game was though, I feel like Nintendo is becoming really complacent with this series in particular. They're just doing what they do with COD. You know, release a game that's basically the same with minor expansions. And I'm okay with it feeling somewhat functionally the same, but in this case, it feels like Splatoon 2 DLC. This game kind of winds up feeling like a $60 update for Splatoon 2. It doesn't even make that many new improvements, it just adds a few mods and weapons. I'd say if you like Splatoon, play this game, but if not, save your money and wait for like a $20 deal or something, I don't know. I honestly don't really have much to say about Stray, because it's not really my thing, but I'll hand it to them, it definitely was surprising after I got it for free on PS Plus. The game was just really solid. The controls, in spite of the mild automation, are fluid, and once you get into the game fully, it's actually pretty damn smooth. This game has more momentum than Sonic Frontiers somehow. The visuals are also good, but standard because we have yet another cross-gen game, but yet it still performs really well on PS5, which is where I played it. I think the best thing about this game is that it's just really relaxing. It knows that it doesn't have to be some upbeat, bombastic action game with amazing, energetic set pieces or anything, or even a happy-go-lucky platformer with crazy cutscenes. It's a game that's allowed to take its time. To some, that doesn't really seem ideal and seems pretty boring, but I think for this game it really works. It just feels so tranquil. My only real issue with this game is that the beginning is kinda not selling. Like, the beginning really doesn't sell you on any of this in this world. It feels almost too calm. But after that beginning segment, the rest of the game is still really fun. Overall, this game is cool and cute. It won't rock your world or anything, but it'll definitely make you feel a bit more relaxed. I honestly did not pay much attention to this game until about June. I'm not really a big fan of Kirby, so I didn't really care about it other than the fact that you could become a car, I guess. Now, having played the game, I think it has charm. It isn't one of the best Switch games ever, but it's still really good. Just like Stray, it's cute and fun, but only a bit more hectic. I would definitely recommend this game to Kirby fans or anyone that just wants something happier to play, rather than the self-serious action games that come out all the time.
You keep saying I have no bitches, but where are yours? Where are they? I don't see them!
If I'm just gonna be honest, I never really liked the LEGO games after LEGO Marvel's Avengers. They just became too formulaic and bland for my taste, and they even reused the same jokes over and over again. So, as you can tell from that, I really was not hyped for Skywalker Saga. Other people were because they talked about the changes that were going to be made and all that, but I just wasn't into it. However, this game is absolutely amazing beyond just being a fun kids game like a lot of the other games recently. They changed parts of the combat so it feels drastically different compared to what it was beforehand, but it still feels a little button mashy, but at least it's fun. What keeps it better than Sonic Frontiers is that it feels like you can vary your moves. This game's combat is also a lot more smooth to control. The LEGO puzzles are great as usual, the visuals are surprisingly good, and the game somehow fixes the Star Wars sequels. Somehow. My only true issue is that the story moves way too fast because it assumes that you've already seen the movies. I get that Star Wars is one of, if not the biggest sci-fi franchise of all time, but even if it wasn't, I don't think that this should be the game you should sell to children if you want to get them to have the full Star Wars experience. And plus, some children haven't even seen the original Star Wars movie. Hell, some haven't even seen the sequels. Also, in spite of how fun the controls are, the game can just wind up really easy later on. But at least the game is still really fun and not a boring slog. I would definitely recommend this game to everyone who hasn't played it.
You want me to show you tough? I'll show you tough.
I already talked about this game in my PS5 review, but I'd still recommend this game. This game is really, really good. The visuals are angular and stylized, the obvious martial arts and action movie references are really cool, and the combat is just really good, even if it's really challenging at the same time. Yeah, the bosses are pieces of shit, but they're at least rewarding and fun. I like how they treat your deaths in this game. What happens is that when you die, you come back a certain amount older based on how many times you died. It adds the age you died and the overall deaths that you have. It's a really cool system and makes it a lot more amazing when you're scared of dying because you're getting older and slower. The story I don't really care about, but this game is still worth playing for the combat alone. Plus, this will probably please fans of martial arts movies. Do be prepared for quite a challenge, though. Now, as you know from my one video on the 2012 series, I'm a pretty solid Turtles fan. Not as active as some, but I definitely do like the series. So when this game was announced, I was actually seldomly hyped, but at the same time I was also scared that it could be a nostalgic cash-in. I thought it would be, at best, Turtles in Time, just mildly updated, and at worst it could be an overly nostalgic cash grab. When the game came out, I played it on Game Pass, and holy shit, it is actually amazing. It was a fun, short, nostalgic love letter to the TMNT games of old. That new intro is one of the best retro revival opening revamps next to Streets of Rage 4. They remixed the version of the 80s show theme. It's absolutely crisp, amazing. I also really like the visuals in this game. I like the 2D sprites so much. I'm glad that Tribute Games decided to carry over the sprite aesthetic from original games, but it looks so much more clean and vibrant in those. They feel expressive even when they're pixelated. The animation makes attacks even punchier as well. I like that they went all on basing it off of the 80s series, and not any other series. Although they have a lot of characters that were introduced in later series, but that's because those characters are kind of almost staple to the series. I feel like the issue with most superhero games is that they always want to cash in on what's popular at that moment in time, so they'll have like the MCU version of a suit or whatever. This game allows most of its main characters and boss fights to come directly from the 80s show, whereas something like, say, the remake of Turtles in Time mainly drew inspiration from the 2003 series and the 2007 movie, while taking a few pieces from the 80s show. This game allows most of its characters to come out of the 80s series, and it makes it feel so far more cohesive. Whether it was those who were introduced in the 80s show, or those that were in any point in the comics then introduced into the 80s show, you know, I really liked their inclusion in this game. The gameplay is fun and really, really compelling. I like that there are actual combos this time, It makes gameplay feel so much more fun. The original games just had like 1 or 2 buttons to attack, but with no real combinations. But this one has a slightly thicker layer of depth. The bosses aren't the hardest, but as long as you know what you're doing, you can still do a lot of damage, and you can strategize. They give you the ability to do a lot of damage on purpose, because then the damage you do, the enemy basically does back. I would for sure recommend this game to anyone who's a Turtles fan or likes the 80s show. I would also recommend this to anyone who likes beat-em-ups in this style or any retro revivals at all. It's pretty short, only having 15 missions, so if you have any free time, get it on Game Pass or something. It's really fun.
Come to the lands between for the Elden Ring? Of course you have. No shame in it. Unfortunately for you, however, you are maidenless.
Elden Ring surprised me when it came out. I personally don't really care that much for the Souls series, and I probably still won't even after this game. Not that I don't think that the Souls games are, quote, objectively good, but I feel like the games are just not for me, and that's fine. The best Souls-like games, in my opinion, are the ones that aren't even really made by From Software. But if you want to talk about the ones that are made by From Software, I'd say the best ones are definitely Sekiro and Bloodborne. But that's because I really like Bloodborne's aesthetic, and I like Sekiro's gameplay a lot more for being a lot more fast-paced. The thing about those games, though, is that I also really like the setting in both of them. Not just Bloodborne. And I pretty much like Elden Ring for pretty similar reasons, along having general gameplay that's good. And this game is an open world game, which I usually don't like all that much, sometimes, kind of, I don't know. But I definitely do think that the open world is really, really good, because it's actually an open world. Yeah, it's similar to games like Breath of the Wild, but I like those type of games more than just the ones that railroad you in specific situations. And I also like that they don't give you so much choice to the point where you get bored, and then you just decide to choose the fastest way to finish the game just so you can get a review out on time. The combat at first seems really slow, but you can unlock so many enchantments and it makes you really powerful. But there's still a lot of skill to be used with these enchantments though. And maybe a little bit of grinding too. These enchantments and spells aren't even true get out of jail free cards. They still allow you to use them skillfully and minimalistically, because they do have their limits. Also, the game's visuals are absolutely amazing. Remember how I said I like that Sekiro and Bloodborne have the best setting in this entire series? This game has that shit up cranked to 11, especially since it's open world. The world is so beautifully barren and grim. My only issue is that FromSoft only knows how to model graphics, but optimizing games is almost their worst enemy. These like 5 frame drops are pretty noticeable. At least if you're someone like me though. I really love this game, but it's not my favorite because the main gameplay loop was fun. Because it is, in this game at least. But since it was tied to a style that I wasn't a big fan of, it didn't win me over. I still think that I would recommend this game, even to some casuals maybe, I don't know. Except you, fuck you. And maybe some people who like open world games, but just like Sifu, do expect a lot of a challenge. I know. I'm gonna get so much flack for this choice. But like I said earlier, this is my opinion, so what I say goes in this video. The games of this year have been really solid for the most part. There were some bangers, but then a lot of them ranged from generally solid to pretty bad. However, in my opinion, God of War Ragnarok is the best of these games. It loses the simplicity of the first game, yes, but it is a story that still feels real because it acknowledges that Kratos and Atreus aren't the only people with the same issues here. You have not just Kratos and Atreus, but you also have Kratos and Freya, Freya and Freyr, Freya and Odin, Atreus and Odin, Sindri and Atreus, and so on. This game's story may not be the colossal, so crazy that shit stopped making sense type, but it's definitely still a game that I really wanted. Just a masterfully crafted story with a few things just going on in it. The visuals may be rooted in PS4 hardware, but it's genuinely artistically really, really good. The worlds are so vibrant and great, and the game allows you to take in the beauty of these environments. There's nothing more to say about this game that no one else has. Hell, I've even talked about how good this game is in my own review. I recommend this game to players who like the first game, and who like story-driven games as a whole. And that's why God of War Ragnarok is my personal game of the year, which, even if Elden Ring won, which is still totally deserved, I really, really love Ragnarok. Just to re-emphasize the point that this is my opinion only in this video, your game of the year may be on this list, maybe even lower than Ragnarok. It might even be Saints Row, as odd as that would be. None of this Game Awards nonsense matters anyways, because some awards show isn't supposed to change your view on any of these games. If you did respect all 18 of these opinions, whether they were common standard or really avant-garde, thank you. I like this medium, and I think it would be counterproductive to argue about this, because an opinion is an opinion at the end of the day. So just play these games for yourself, and have a good time for whichever and whatever you like. Besides, isn't that what video games are all about anyways?